Greetings. This is Professor Mark Gura. My colleague Michelle Haken and I wrote the book Creative SEL, Using Hands-On Projects to Boost Social Emotional Learning. What follows is an interview with Laala Matias, one of the 16 people who answered our call and contributed a chapter to the book. This one is very special to me because through serendipity, it turns out that Laala was one of my students when I taught middle school visual art in an East Harlem public school many years ago. Maybe you'd like to dedicate this interview to your mom.
She's always with me. And she was extremely proud of me while she was recovering from her ailment, and she saw the book and she was so impressed. And it gives me a great sense of pride. And I'm so glad to have been a participant in the creation of this book.
Okay, Laala Matias, welcome again to my world. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I've wanted to interview you for a while because you are one of 16 contributors to this book published by ISTE called Creative SEL, Using Hands-On Projects to Boost Social Emotional Learning. And I'm not going to interview all of the contributors, but a few. You have the distinction of being only one of two contributors who are not officially educators. I mean, don't hold government agency issued certificates in teaching. I could easily see you as a teacher. At any rate, your contribution to the book was a very good one.
It was my honor. Thank you.
So before we talk about how you and I got to know each other, what is Laala Matias? I mean, professionally, what do you do?
I'm a filmmaker and a blogger. I've also written for print and online publications about politics, the music industry, and travel. Overall, I write in the different modalities. I call myself a multi-platform storyteller, but my true passion is filmmaking.
Leaving university, I think you were a Disney fellow, right?
Yeah. Well, no, so I worked in between that. So I went to NYU Film. Well, first, let's backtrack. I met you at East Harlem Performing Arts School. I was always an artist since I was a child. So my mother heard about the school. And one of the benefits of having a parent who's an educator is that they're really in the loop. So I had left Mott Hall, which was the #1 school in New York City. I wasn't a good fit for that school. So then I proceeded to go to East Harlem Performing Arts from 7th to 9th grade. And you're my favorite teacher there. And you taught us language arts and art. And that was so much fun. It was a really nice, eclectic group of young kids of color, mostly Black and Nuyorican. Yeah, it was just really interesting to go to school there. And you had us doing a project that was called The Great Mosaic. Was it what it was called?
The Gorgeous Mosaic.
I'm going 30 years back. So I remember you decided like we should all do these little tile pieces of different faces of kids around that we recognize. And, so then you did this, you went to Japan, right? Like you went all over with it.
Yes, I did. I'm astounded you remember that.
Why wouldn't I? It's such an amazing feat. Important things I remember very much. Then I did that project. I started doing collages at the school at East Harlem Performing Arts. And then I went from there to Elizabeth Irwin High School, which is an independent private school affiliated with Little Red Schoolhouse. And then I went there from 10th to 12th grade. That's in Soho. And then after that, I guess I just couldn't leave the neighborhood. And then I ended up going to NYU Film a few blocks away. And then I worked at production companies. I got so tired of it. So by the time I got into my fellowship at ABC Disney, well, I came in through the Institute of American Indian Arts because I'm part American Indian, more Native American. But in between all of that, between film school and my fellowship, which was a good 8 years, I worked in production. And I also worked for different publications. So I worked on music videos, TV shows, quite a variety of programming, supporting other filmmakers making their dreams come true.
So what were you doing as a fellow with Disney?
It was originally called the Disney ABC Writers Fellowship, and it was an incubation program to help us possibly get staffed on TV shows or at least immerse ourselves in television industry. But it was a really great experience. As a filmmaker, with my films at the Hollywood Black Film Festival, which used to be a really big, great film festival. So I went there 2 years in a row and I screened at other festivals. And then I started wanting to understand the land of La La Land. So then when I got to LA, I need to like figure out a right platform to let people know like what we could do without breaking the bank. So I created this site called the La La Land Alert, which was like things to do in LA for $10 or less. And it was voted most valuable blogger for dining and entertainment by CBS LA, and which was a great accomplishment. And yeah, so I got to work in different capacities, which was great.
I was a visual art teacher at the East Harlem Performing Arts School. And I do recall this semester had already begun. The director of the school, John Drescher, walked this little girl in to my art room and introduced you to me. And he said to me, Mark, this is Lala, and she's a new student here. And please look out for her and take good care of her. And you turned out to be quite a little package and bubbly and enthusiastic, the best kind of student for me.
Oh, thank you so much. Seventh grade.
Seventh grade. We had some fun there at that school and we learned a lot about art. Apparently, one of the activities, the projects I introduced to you kids resonated for you. It actually became the chapter that you gifted to the Creative SEL book. So let's see if we can talk about that a little bit. The editors put it up front in the book, said the second out of 30 odd activities. It says activity number 2,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
brand, your future. Tell us a little bit about how this came to be. What was it that you did in my classroom?
I remember we were always doing different projects, and I feel like you wanted us to be multidisciplinary, where we incorporate the language arts skills and the art. So I just remember you saying, you guys should think about your future. What do you want to do? I remember that you said, let's work on these business cards. And you gave us these like, felt like hard pieces of oat tag, I guess. I don't know, like tiles. I don't know where you got these things from.
Yeah, there were more or less business card sized pieces of cardstock that I
Yeah.
had gone out and I mean, I wanted you guys to create a business card. So I gave you a real blank.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember, and then we had to brainstorm, like, what do I want to do? Blah, 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 blah. I remember being like, I want to be this. I want to be an actress. I want to be a director. I had all these like terms that I didn't really know the whole gravity of what they meant. I was 12 years old, you know, but I just remember like writing it out and drawing it. And I remember thinking like, this is really cool. I always kept it. It's been in my photo album for a while. And I always kept it around. And then I looked one day and I was like, oh my God, you've done like all of these things. It was amazing. I feel like it was a true manifesting tool. And in terms of like working in social media and branding being so important, it was like a personal branding exercise without that being like the trendy coin yet.
In the book, as an illustration, there's and I'm very moved by this. Not only do you remember that activity and it still resonates for you after all of these decades,
Yeah, that's
um, and you remember it so well, and the actual business card you produced in seventh or eighth grade, whatever it was at that point, you still have it. However, because of your mom's illness, you were away from your apartment in LA where business card resides. You were here in New York with your mom, And so I did a little based on your description because I didn't remember this card. You described it to me, kind of recreated this, and you gave it the thumbs up as a reasonably faithful facsimile recreation. And in the book, it sits there and kind of guides people who might want to do this activity with their students. Do you want to comment on the card now that you're looking at it again?
Yeah, this card looks different from the one I created. The one I created had like a 45-degree angle, like a kind of a banner, you know? The most important that matches is it had positions that I visualized as myself being able to do and fields that I wanted to explore, which I ended up doing. That's the most important part of this card for me, is that like at 12 years old, I was that ambitious. And I think that's really important. I've talked to young people before, and I always tell them, think out of the box. Like, what do you want to do? Why don't you think about what you would like to explore when you get out of school, when you're an adult, so that right now you can research those things and learn some of that craft. So it really was tied in for me in the long run, like because my original card says photographer, actress, filmmaker, director, writer, and it made sense because I actually used to act when I was a teenager. I did photography, and then I've done filmmaking. So it gave me a path, and I remember referencing the card so many times over the years. I remember being like, "Oh yeah, that's what you wrote. Like you got to do it. Got to pursue this."
So
So
this card that you produced in my classroom in middle school actually became a kind of touchstone, a talisman, an inspiring and informing artifact about your aspirations. Discussing this with you and recreating this scenario in my mind, I think this may have been the first time that you seriously considered what your proclivities and talents were and how you might translate that into becoming a professional out in the world.
yes, I think that having something so tactile and that I created myself and having it in this business card format, when I did my first business cards as a filmmaker, it wasn't unattainable. It just felt like this is what you knew you were going to pursue. And even though I personally don't care about acting, that's not my thing. I mean, I care about it as a director, but not as to perform. That's not my goal. Um, just having known that I tried, and they were all kind of under the umbrella of the arts. So it just for me it was so pivotal, and we didn't realize it. In fact, you didn't remember this exercise, did you?
No, you know how many activities
I
I
know.
created for kids over the years. I mean, that's why I was impressed and kind of floored that you remembered in pretty good detail what must have been a week's activity at the school. So you and I put our heads together, and because now this book, Creative SEL, is a book of activities suggested for teachers to do with their students. And we needed to write this up and make some suggestions. And so one of the things in the chapter, and the chapter is 6 pages long of detail, there we included this tool among others, which is kind of focusing table. On the left-hand side are what we could call index of personal attributes. You know, what are your interests? What are the things you're passionate about? What are the things you'd like to learn how to do? Yeah, and on and on. There's a whole raft of these. And then on the right-hand side is a blank area. And this is very much this business card activity and envisioning experience. So now that you've kind of indexed who you are and what you've got, you know, who do you think you might be in the world, quotes, when you grow up?
So considering this book is about creative social emotional learning and mental health being such a big priority right now, especially post-pandemic, I think this the youth have not had the chance to socialize in a normal way until recently for 3 years. And to give this exercise that's stimulating the brain, also making youth think outside of the box and think about their futures. I think it was really amazing. And I think that this exercise being number 2 in the book is great because that's so important to make sure that they know that it's where do you want to go? You know, some
Yeah.
things will be periphery, some things will be in the forefront.
Well, as we're talking about it now, Lila, it occurs to me that why have kids do this only once? I think it would be a good thing to do in upper elementary and then
Mhm.
again in middle school. And high school's kind of crazy because the time is so dedicated. There's one of the big problems with high school is, you're either in language arts or you're in science. I mean, in a guidance class, this would be a great thing to do.
Yeah, the student advisor, it's great for applying to college. I think this would be fitting in high school, even though it's more hectic. But yeah, I mean, for me, it really helped me figure out who I was, who I am.
By now, you're a highly experienced person, Lala. You've been around the block a few times. You've lived in New York and you've done university and you've survived LA, as you call La La Land. It's a very successful blogger. And so I think there are many, when I asked you, would you like to be part of this? Would you like to contribute an activity, a chapter to the book? You said yes. And I'm very pleased that this is the one that you dredged up out of your memory and lived experience. We took pains to write this up in those 6 pages so that other teachers could do this with their kids. Let's talk about some other things. I've intimated to you that maybe you'd consider being a teacher someday, and you've kind of entertained that and you haven't rejected it or
No,
but I know you think about young people and school, and I don't mind telling my audience that unlike most teachers, I didn't have an easy time in school. I didn't fit in. My mind just works differently. And I went to school back in the late 50s and 60s, la when conformity was the rule,
mm,
and I didn't conform that well. Anyhow, I know you think about all of this stuff, and well, let me just ask you about where do you think you're going? You have a good number of years to work and produce and contribute to the world. What do you think you might want to do with yourself?
I do love teaching. I did teach after school, and I also taught filmmaking to an after school program, which was a great joy for me. But as a blogger, the 3 things that you're supposed to do as a blogger is to like or social media influencer, content creator. It's entertain, engage, entertain, or inform. So I tried to do that, all 3 of those things. And so part of that informing is to teach. But I would love to teach on an academic level. I know that that's a hard path nowadays because it's so hard to get tenure. And that's a long road. But as a filmmaker, I want to focus on my craft again. And I'd like to produce a short that can possibly get me a deal. And I'd like to make something in the next year or less that would go to film festivals. A lot of people are getting raw roles out of those kinds of projects. So um, I was very lucky. Our family's from here, the Caribbean and South America, and sometimes with family with immigrant background, they are not conducive to the arts. They're usually discouraging. But my mom was an innovative kind of person, born here, and really saw the value in creative abilities. And my end goals are to continue to write and put myself out there as a filmmaker and a
Yeah, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking that this has been kind of the perfect response for this particular interview because you haven't wavered in what you want to do with your life since 7th grade. It's the same set of realizations about yourself. What do you feel kids should get more of in school? And I guess it's kind of the same answer, but I'll ask you to elaborate just a little bit on that.
I think that their interest and natural talent should be engaged. And maybe we can learn from the Dutch school system, which is a little intense in a different way.
You have a connection to Suriname.
Hmm.
In fact, your dad is from Paramaribo.
Yeah, well, he was from the interior in the Amazon, but the missionaries, the Catholic missionaries came and took our family from the Amazon. We're the descendant of Maroons who were like the West Africans from Dahomey and Ghana that were unable to be enslaved. They were rebels, and they went to the Amazon and they intermarried with American Indians in Suriname. So our people are from the Amazon, and then the colonizers, the missionaries, they came and took my family to the city. So then he lived in Paramaribo.
So because you have a deep roots connection to Suriname, which used to be known as Dutch Guiana, you spent some of your youth in Holland.
I went to Holland from the age of 12. I've been there so many times. I can't count how many times, probably at least 7 times in my life. My father lived there until the rest of his life, and I have lots of family there. We used to be Dutch Guyana, so that's the connection between Holland and Suriname. Suriname's been independent about, I think, 50 years now, and but we have more Surinamese descent people in Holland than in Suriname. So because the Dutch did a brain drain of the former colonies, because I have so much family there, I am very familiar with their education system. They really know how to engage the different types of people with what they would actually be interested in. And I think that that's the challenge with our education system here, is that it's not customizable and it's too general. And I think that that's where we have room for growth, because the young people, they're not being engaged, they're not being excited, they're not being stimulated. That's how I feel. Like I was always in specialized schools, and so I was constantly being stimulated.
We have a very large group of what I'll call traditional educators. And this book is actually for them, and it's for the other smaller group that who I'll just call progressive educators, who are very keen on fostering and nourishing each student's curiosity and encouraging that student to find his or her passion. And it sounds to me like what you experienced in school when you were a young girl in Holland, that it's a richer experience in terms of curiosity and personal passion.
I think the difference is that everybody is not pushed to do the same thing in Holland. I think here we're pushed in the same direction, and it's just you can't put square peg into a round hole. Like right now, the way the system is working, we're losing a lot of kids. So if you do an
Yeah.
activity like this when you're younger, you at least have some sensibility, especially at high school. It's an awkward time, but at least you can have like some idea of what you're interested in. You can always change. We can reinvent ourselves. Nothing's written in stone.
In your professional experience, um, you've learned quite a bit about social media. I mean, you're a professional blogger and you're very familiar with other kinds of social media. Actually, I think maybe that's something you could be teaching young people. That there's definitely a need for that. But is there anything else you want to add?
I think the main thing is to talk to young people. I'm always engaging with young people, and I look like a kid half the time, so they think I'm close to them in age. And I just think it's taking in their experiences, what matters to them, and trying to adapt projects to that, because that'll be the best way to engage them. You knew at East Harlem Performing Arts that we were artists, that we all had artistic proclivities, and you stimulated that part of our brains, and you let us know like it is possible. And I think that the more teachers are willing to not just show the same exact way that they taught for 20 years, and they think about this current generation, or like, and it's all about expanding the horizons. I think a lot of it's just like letting them decide what they're interested in learning, and giving them activities like this, because I don't know who this activity wouldn't work for.
Thanks. I won't date you, but I will say that I was in my 30s when we met, You were my seventh grade student, and I was a much younger man. I'm in my 70s now. It's been quite a ride when we met. You were 12, and I'm in my 70s now.
You're
So,
dating me, man.
it, yeah, there you go. So it's been an extraordinary ride, and why not? People meet in whatever circumstances they meet, and if they're kindred spirits,
Hmm. Yes, yes, yes.
friendship happens.
Yes, and I'm so glad for your presence in my life. You're one of my mentors, and you're just such a progressive person. You're always working on something new and expanding, and that's what I love about Sagittarians. Like you guys don't stay still, and I really admire that. And my mom, many of her friends were her former students, so to me, it's very normal for me to like be friends. You,
I'm very flattered, and thanks for talking with me about the book and
thank
life.
you for the opportunity.
Okay. Maybe you'd like to dedicate this interview to your mom.
She's always with me. And she was extremely proud of me while she was recovering from her ailment, and she saw the book and she was so impressed. And it gives me a great sense of pride. And I'm so glad to have been a participant in the creation of this book. How my mom would engage students with her anthropology classes. She would say, study a culture that you don't know, interview people from that culture, give me a home remedy, give me recipes from that culture, and learn what inspired them. That's expanding the mind.
And I was fortunate enough to know your mom a little bit. I was up at the house a couple of times and I saw her at my workplace a couple of times. I think she came in like the other parents.
Oh, probably parent teacher. Yeah, she would definitely go to those nights.
Yes.
She was an educator herself for 60 years.
She was an educator and she taught where?
Well, first she started in junior high schools in East Harlem in El Barrio. And then she did that for, I think, about 10 years. And then she proceeded to, well, her principal at the junior high said, you'd be a great college professor. So then she went and pursued another master's. And then after that, she ended up teaching at CCNY and Wesleyan. She taught at Hunter. She taught at John Jay, BMCC, College in New Rochelle to adult students. And she taught for a total of 60 years, but 50 years at City College.
50 years at City College, and she was professor of.
Cultural anthropology was her specialty. She helped start the Africana Studies, Black Studies department. Her specialties were the Horn of Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Medical and cultural anthropology and linguistics, cultural linguistics.
Your mom was a very accomplished teacher, and I didn't even know she taught junior high school in El Barrio, which is where I taught.
That's how we met.
So your mom passed away very recently.
On September 8th, that's when she passed away.
So you and I will dedicate this interview to the memory of your mom and the wonderful work she did in
Yes.
education for half a century plus.
Yes.